RJ, how we doing today?
I'm doing all right, my friend. How about yourself?
I can't complain. Great to see you again, as always. So today we're going to do number 5 in our 6-part series of our AI 101 series. And today we're going to talk about the organization and really about how we're organizing your employees and how AI should work with the employees and what do we do with the employees if it messes up what they're currently doing and all that kind of fun stuff. So why don't you intro our topic today?
Yeah, this one I think is probably, the most top of mind when people think of AI. It's like the human element, organizing, your workforce, talent, and how do you do that in light of the impact that and potential that AI is bringing into that equation. And so it's probably also candidly just the biggest fear that people have about AI.
Right.
It's, is AI an enterprise? Like people fear it's for using for job replacement, but really, if you sort of look at the data and you look at who's succeeding, the true winners aren't using AI just to reduce their headcount. They're using it to really sort of provide more horsepower for their workforce to accomplish more.
Right.
And so I think we're moving from sort of the mindset of staff reduction to staff augmentation.
Yeah.
And the future, it isn't really like AI versus people. It's more like AI plus people. The sort of the better together story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, other than, we've heard now about the black box AI, right? Black box AI fails. Other than what we've been using AI for since the 1950s, which is automation in automotive lines and things like that. I mean, there are places where robots work really, really well. That's not going to change. And that's really, they're going to get a little better with AI and the robot. I think in our last one, you called them cobots, right? Some of those are going to get a little bit better. But the way I like to tell people when I have these conversations, they just don't get it and they don't understand. It's like, look, back in 1990 when I got hired at WordPerfect and I went into IT, right? And then I started my technology career. I could not do my job without a computer. And it's been since 1990. It's been 35, 36 years now. I have not been able to do, I can't even imagine sitting at a desk without a computer, what I would do, because my entire job relies on that computer. Well, for the last 4 years, 5 years, I've had AI installed on that computer and I use AI every day. And now I honestly don't know how I could do my job and accomplish what I do today without my computer and my AI tools. It's just it's a better computer. It's a faster computer. It's a more capable computer. It just really enables us to do more with less, more accurately, more efficiently. And if we look at it that way, AI has allowed me to do things that I have not been able to do that I wish that I had the time to do for the last 5 years as an executive here at the company. It's like, I just don't have time. I got too many things on my plate. Well, guess what? I'm getting half of those additional things done now that I wasn't before. And that's what today's all about. We want to talk about that and changing your perception of AI and how it affects your workforce.
Yeah, and so with that, really, the thing that I think we should start off on is just like talking about like sort of what's the new org chart look like in this sort of AI world, and I would say sort of like looking at this from more of like an AI native perspective. It's not something I know, Ron, you've said this in a bunch of the recordings at this point. It's not something you're bolting on. It's something that you need to be building in, right? And
Yeah.
and so you got to come at this from that perspective. So it's not just like, okay, let's take everybody we have and figure how do we bolt AI on to what they're doing. It's,
Right.
we talked about it in our last episode. It's like, how are you identifying tasks and where you're applying AI? But here, we're really thinking about, okay, redesigning the org chart in a way to be AI native. And that means, clearly identifying, like we talked about last time, identifying those tasks that are basic and predictable and repeatable, where like a AI assistant could be doing some or most of that to help that person do more. And then thinking about, okay, to your point, like with the roles that are more where you want to apply your team to, where can we be thinking about sort of areas that require strategic thinking, where they require sort of understanding the customer or partner relationship, where they're very high risk. I know, you always say that, AI, doesn't have a moral compass when it's thinking about, decisions. And there's a lot of areas where we can empower people to really go further in those roles, and then still be getting value from using AI to sort of cover their baseline predictable rote work that's preventing them from really applying themselves in these more strategic and more high risk sort of decisions.
Yeah, I mean, just a simple example here at Clarity that we do, I think everybody now uses the AI note takers, right? And then the AI summaries. I mean, our whole sales process has changed. And what it's allowed our salespeople to do is not have to worry about spending 3 hours taking notes and going back and revisiting videos and going back and looking at our past notes, because the summary, the notes, the action items, and all that's bubbled up by AI now. And we don't forget stuff anymore because it takes everything from the calls. It lets us focus more on the relationship. It lets me look into RJ's eyes and see that when I said something, he doesn't necessarily agree with it. So I can say, what seems to be the problem with that concept? Does that not work for your organization? And it lets me get more like personal, like RJ just said. It lets me deepen the relationship and work more on the real true salesman, which is the relationship building and truly understanding what my clients' needs are so that I'm delivering a better solution. And I'm not spending 3/4 of my time on the tedious tasks like scheduling appointments and rereading notes and bubbling up action items and things like that. We do that. One of the things that from an implementation perspective, and again, I mentioned this in the last one, but RJ's going to start each topic and he's going to talk about the business impact. And then I'm going to come in from a technical IT. Okay, now that we talked about why it's needed and how important it is, here's how we implement it and here's how we do that. And so that's kind of the form we're going to take today. So me responding to what RJ said from an implementation perspective. What we recommend is you start what we would call something like, you can call it whatever you want, but an AI center of excellence. Now, typically that might be some business executives and IT staff sitting down and looking at all of the business that we do, all of the things that we do within our organization, figuring out how and where AI can participate. The way I like to look at AI is just another digital staff member. That's it, right? And if you look at it that way, we could look at a business process that used to take 4 people to do and go, wow, well, this one has a lot of data manipulation and a lot of data entry and all that. AI can do all of that for us. And so, wow, it can do what used to take a person and a half. So now we only need 2.5 people to do that. Great. Well, now what are the other 3 things that we've wanted to do as a company for the last 3 years that we haven't been able to do because we didn't have people? We have an extra body and a half now that we might be able to slide around, and we can start moving resources around because we have this additional team member that does digital manipulation quickly, right? And if we look at it that way, it works really, really well. Now, when we start doing that, the biggest thing that I'm finding is the governance and security and the different data sources first, right? That's the very first activity that we all have to do. We have to start mapping out the business processes and simultaneously, where is all of our data? What are all the data sources? And what governance and data and compliance rules do we need to adhere to so that we don't just play AI Wikipedia, pull all our data in and accidentally exacerbate and share out all of our company secrets, right? So as the IT team evaluates the hard stuff and the technical stuff, they can start picking AI solutions and AI tools that can solve some of those things. Because what we don't want is we don't want what's happening today, which is the AI Wild Wild West, where everybody's like, oh, well, I have Copilot on my machine, so I'm starting to play with that. And somebody else is like, well, I have this, so I'm using Gemini. Everybody's using whatever the heck they got. Everybody's using whatever their friend's willing to spend 5 minutes to just teach them 1 or 2 things. And so they start playing with it. And you got everybody using different tools at a different expertise level that doesn't really end up benefiting the company at all. So what we need is that center of excellence defines where AI will play, how AI will play with the team, what tools there will be, and then it allows them to build the training, the onboarding, the skill requirements, the support necessary to train, to skill, to reskill the employees to be able to use those tools in an efficient and secure manner to benefit the organization and benefit them in their job, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it, right? I mean, clearly AI is not going anywhere. Not like
Right.
AI is going away. So, and change is the only constant. But so, how do you evolve with that change? And I think that's the exact way, looking at it, upskilling for, and reskilling. So, where are the places where you're taking people, they're doing essentially the same job, but now they're doing that job with AI. So, leadership, and that would be the upskilling piece. Okay, we're going to teach somebody how to do their job or help them learn how to do their job more efficiently, more effectively, produce more using AI, as opposed to reskilling, which is okay, there's probably a lot of things that AI can do to do a big, heavy part of that lift. Maybe we take this person and move them to a different role and
Right.
we teach them a new skill where, you as a an employee or team member, right? I think there's a lot of people that want to learn, that want to grow, that want new opportunities. And candidly, if you're able to provide more value to your company, probably is going to be, commensurate with you getting more value back. Uh, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. But the key is that leadership has to look at these things and look at, okay, where is upskilling opportunities and where is, reskilling, sort of required. I mean, and even if you just look back, there's countless sort of examples of this, in history, for example. If you look at like ATMs, like, people thought, oh, they're going to no more bank tellers. No, they're still bank tellers, but they tend
Yeah.
to be more relationship managers now. And there's still people that want to go in and meet with them face to face. And you're building relationships where those clients become more sticky. And there's a higher level of trust, right? And trust in a financial relationship is paramount. So,
Right.
they're leveraging that. Or you think about, back in the 90s, like the business process re-engineering, people, oh, we just don't need people. Well, that's why that failed, right? You
Yeah.
have to look at these things not only just as a technical component, but this sort of socio-technical system where people have to embrace the change, or it's not going to play out. Or you look at like travel agents, right? Well, people can do a lot of that on their own, but there's still a large chunk of people out there that do very, very well doing sort of more complicated and more high value, high experiential travel, right? So it's just
Yep.
shifting. And I think that's the thing that leadership has to identify with your org chart. How do you manage that shift and get people put in positions to succeed?
Yeah. And I think to take your skilling and your upskilling and your reskilling, if we break it down, I mean, that's kind of how us IT people think about everything. Every job is eating an elephant. We have to break it into teeny little chunks. Otherwise, we look at the big thing and go, it's unsolvable, right? So we just break it into 100 chunks and we solve each chunk, and then you glue it all together, and lo and behold, you have a solution, right? And that's just how our brains operate. So that's where we need to get, because a lot of this that we talk about, AI is here to stay. It's going to affect our workforce. It's going to affect our business. But breaking that elephant of that reality down into how the heck do we even start is the biggest problem I see with most of my clients. It's that analysis paralysis, right? They just keep looking at the problem and it is so big, and they have so many things about AI that they don't know. It's inachievable. So here's just a little rule of thumb for me. If I'm going to upskill someone, I'm going to go to RJ and say, RJ, I'm going to add this additional task onto your job. You're now responsible for resizing the corporate logo for all of our white papers. And if somebody wants to do a new shirt with the Clarity logo on it, it's your job to get the logo resized and whatnot, right? So you're going to have to use pick your poison, Photoshop, whatever it is. Great. I'm going to get a tool. I'm going to train him, and I'm going to upskill him and give him an additional skill. So if the job requires an additional skill where we're just going to introduce AI, give them a little bit of training, and then they're going to be able to do that additional piece or component of their current job, that's upskilling. Really super simple. And we can do training around that. We can put videos together. We can do all kinds of onboarding. That's really super simple to do. Hey, Mr. Marketing Associate, you're now going to have to help use ChatGPT to generate content. Here's some prompt engineering to do that so that you can get help with your job. That's upskilling. Reskilling is a completely different animal, because now It's like, okay, RJ, I know all you've ever done is marketing for the last 30 years, but we're going to teach you sales. And so now all of a sudden we have to completely introduce new concepts. And so that's now new models. And so if you think about it that way, if you're just adding a small skill, then basically it's really around just prompt engineering and teaching somebody how to use GPT or use Claude or Gemini or one of the tools that are out there. It's prompt engineering. It's simple. How do you use this tool? Here's the 5 things that make me able to generate great content with this tool. Use these prompts, and then you can do X, X, and X. That's prompt engineering. That's adding a skill. When you're reskilling, that takes a lot more, because now you're looking at models, you're looking at LLMs, you're looking at agents, and there's a lot more there. You also have to remember that the IT team has to think about the data and the security and the governance and where the humans in the loop need to be remaining in there. Let's take a hospital, for example. We might be able to have AI do the triage. So now when everybody comes in very quickly, AI might even take a picture of their wound, that takes the intake, their verbal intake, does a quick analysis and says, this person needs to be seen by somebody immediately, and flags that up real quick. When you got 75 people in a waiting room, how do they triage very quickly who needs attention first and who's more serious than the others? And maybe AI can do that and flag the 5 that are important. Then the human in the loop can come over, look at them real quick, look at those 5 people, and then they can shuffle them back into the thing. And that's where the humans in the loop become really important. So instead of the human taking 10 minutes apiece for those 75 people and being buried for an hour and a half and creating that backlog that we've seen in all the TV shows with all the people in the emergency room, right? People come in and AI very quickly triages them and puts them into buckets and flags up. So when that front end person in the triage center now, they can come in very quickly and just look at the 5 people that AI think are serious, bump, 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 bump. Then the other ones that are questionable, go and review those and goes, oh, that one needs to be pulled over too. I think that's where we start needing to break it down and determining exactly how and where the humans are in the loop versus where we can just do some upskilling, introducing new tools and some prompts, or whether we have to train on new tools and teach them coding. Like at Clarity, most of our developers now are using AI, a complete retraining. How do they use it within their Visual Studio? How do they use it in their language? How do they use it for QA? How do they use it when they pull it in? And then they need to write the automation scripts for the testing to ensure that what they've done didn't break something. Every time they go back and have AI change something, it may have introduced other breakage. So how do they engineer and build in when they have AI put something in? How do they also add in the testing component that ensures that things don't break when things get changed going forward?
Yeah, and I think you bring up, some important points there, no doubt. And I still think we're sort of going back to our previous episode where we're looking at this sort of AI assessment matrix, and we're looking at things that are sort of, how we're sort of putting things in different quadrants and what role AI plays in sort of each of those quadrants.
Yeah, and what we'll do is I'll put a graphic together. So when we produce this, I'll bring a graphic right up here on the screen between RJ and I'll try not to chop too much of our heads off. But you can see in the quadrant, there's going to be 2 axes. One axis is going to be the complexity and one's going to be the risk. And we'll start off at the bottom left where it's both low risk and low complexity. And we can say, great, these are standard back office, administrative, data entry. AI can act autonomously. There's not a lot of risk. It can literally, if it's crushing. I did a podcast the other day with a PhD in biochemistry, and they were talking about how they use AI to just go through when they introduce a new gene and they introduce a new molecule, element, whatever it was. There are over 6 million iterations of how that gene or how that introduction can affect everything else. And they just use AI to rip through all 6 million of them and spit out the results and bubbles up what needs to be addressed and whether it works or not. Those are the kind of things that are low risk, that really are data processing. And those are where AI plays really, really well. So the hope for this is that we can show you this quadrant. We'll talk through each of the quadrant segments. I'll have you take the next quadrant, RJ. And This is how you can determine very quickly where can AI play. If you start mapping your processes and your components of all the work that needs to happen into these 4 quadrants, then you can go, that one's low risk, that one's low complexity, great place for AI to play.
Yep.
Now we can start looking at it, right?
Yeah, and the sort of the sibling to that on that side of the chart is low complexity but high risk, right? So these where you certainly want to use AI because AI can handle low complexity repetitive tasks at a high volume, like what you're talking about, like doing 6 million permutations of a gene or whatever. How do you calculate all that stuff that could have taken days, weeks, months before can now be done in a day, hours, or minutes using AI. But the impact of that could be really, really important. So that's high risk. And so in those scenarios, you want AI to do those sort of simple things, but then provide that information to the human in the loop to review, make sure, reassess. Maybe it needs to rerun some calculations. Maybe like, gosh, that data just doesn't look right. Let's make sure I'm not missing anything in the way I'm setting up the prompt and the way that AI is performing that. And then, then you can move forward with it. It goes back to sort of the analogy we used where, you've got radiologists where, 90% can be assessed by AI and say, no, everything's clear, no problems whatsoever. And then the 10% are like, okay, there's an anomaly here. It goes to the human to really spend their time on diagnosing, is that a real, what's that anomaly like? And how do you do that? So you're really providing the effort and energy where it's required most from the human team member, and AI sort of enabling that to happen in those, sort of lower complexity but high risk tasks.
Yeah, where we see a lot of that, at least in our clients, are the things where it's high data, high risk is big, banks. They're processing thousands of loan applications. AI can rip through those very, very quickly and auto approve those that hit a 95% approval rate. Everything lines up, credit score lines up, job lines up, pay stubs line up, everything's great, and auto approves those. What would have taken somebody in underwriting weeks to do, they could approve them literally in minutes or online while the person's waiting. Those that have an anomaly or have something bubble up, then it bubbles them up, but it doesn't make the decision. It just then sends them to the underwriter. And now the underwriter can spend the time, like you said, with the rad tech on the radiology, they can spend the time looking at those anomalies and making those decisions. We see the same thing with insurance claims, right? And we've seen both the good and the bad of how AI can process insurance claims real quick. AI shouldn't be making the final decision. AI should be going through and approving the ones that meet all of the 100% of the criteria and just automatically cranking those through. And then the 10% that are flagged, instead of denying them, they should be flagged, bubbled up to the human. The human then should evaluate those and maybe have to reach out, have some conversations and do the deep dive to figure out before they're just carte blanche disapproved, right? So the next one is the inverse of what you just said, where it's low risk, but it's really high complexity. So things like kind of what I do in marketing, right? It's low risk doing new marketing collateral and stuff, but it's high complexity because we're talking about our new AI tool. I got to learn, and it's got to be all about the technology and all about the use cases and all about stuff that maybe I don't know. So it's a really good opportunity where AI can act as a research assistant for me. And I can say, hey, go out and research these 7 AI platforms and tell me all the benefits and use cases and the best places where AI could be used for each of those. I'm going to do a white paper that kind of is a matrix that shows where all the different tools are and what they can be used and where they're best suited. I'm not the IT guy. That's not me to know that, but I can use AI as an assistant to go out and do that research and bring that information back from the true sources of each of those. Can go out to anthropic.com and get all the information and pull it back. Right. And then I can then maybe use a different AI agent like ChatGPT to turn around and take that research data and help me format it in a white paper and do those kind of things. Right. So that one's where it's low risk, but high complexity, where a lot of research needs to be done.
Yeah. And the last one is, the high risk, high complexity, right? That's where really still needs to be very, sort of people centric, human centric, because it's high stakes decisions and it's a lot of complexities that go into making those decisions, where you can still use AI to sort of make some recommendations or do some of the research, but it's in this case it's very much just providing some level of baseline assistance, and the bulk of the effort and energy is still coming from the human because of the ability to look at all those different angles, especially going back to AI doesn't have a moral compass, and understanding how to do that and those things, and whether it's more complicated medical diagnoses or things like that, where really the people have to retain sort of absolute oversight and ethical control of those decisions, right? So that's pretty simple when you're in that quadrant to understand, like, okay, this is really still just AI can just help a little bit, but it's really more just empowering your people to focus there.
Yeah. So those are the kind of the three areas that we talked about today. So let's kind of just talk quickly about some of the summary and some of the key takeaways. The first one is treat AI, when you're looking at AI in your organization, favor augmentation over replacement, right? I couldn't do my job for 30 years without a computer. I can't do my job without a computer and AI now. It's not, I'm going to get AI and replace Ron. We don't need marketing or sales anymore. That's not the way we looked at AI in our organization. It's like, oh, okay, can Ron benefit from bringing AI into his job? And can he do things more efficiently, more accurately, whatever thing? And the answer was absolutely. Like in some of my tasks, 80% more efficiently, other tasks almost 100% more efficiently, and other things not at all, right? And AI doesn't belong everywhere. RJ just said in the top of the quadrant, there are certain things that it just doesn't belong playing there. So if you look at each task individually and say, is this task being done right now with the current resources and process the most efficiently? Yes, then don't change it. Don't ram AI in there just because. It's not a bolt-on tool that belongs everywhere. It doesn't make sense, right? That's the way you need to look at it. So augmentation over replacement.
Yeah, and that made me think of one thing, Ron, that I know you and I talked about earlier before we started the webinar. It's like, people are looking at AI from a business wise. There's sort of two sides to every business, right? There's cost, expense, and there's revenue and growth. And I think a lot of the focus of AI has been more on reducing cost and expense and increasing efficiency, which it certainly can play in those areas, and it certainly is. But where it appears to be, to me at least, the biggest opportunities for companies, I think by the way, I think that's a short-term focus. Yeah. Okay, how do we reduce our costs? How do we reduce our expenses? How do we do these sort of things? I think that's a very short-term thing, and it's real, right? I'm not trying to say it's not a real thing, because it is, and we're seeing it out there, in companies all the time right now. But the longer-term component of this, and this is where I really think it's going to determine who are the longer-term winners in the application of AI in their businesses. By becoming more efficient with what you're doing now through the use of AI, how do you then take that extra capacity that you now have and do things to grow your business, look for more strategic opportunities, build stronger relationships? So it's not just, hey, let's cut costs. Okay, fine, that's probably short term, but those people that are reapplying that efficiencies and the capacity to go out and develop new channels, to build stronger relationships, to understand and get into new markets and do different things, that's what's going to provide, I think, the longer term metric of success, where we're going to look back and say, hey, those people that just used AI to sort of reduce costs, well, where's their business now? Because they didn't grow, they just went on the cost side. And those companies that are positioning themselves for growth are going to be also getting the efficiency benefit. So I think, to me, that's a huge way to look at this in regards to the longer term vision of success. So and it sort of, I think, also plays into this whole concept of thinking about this from more of a socio-technical perspective. It's people and technology. It's not just technology. So, and both sides of that equation have to do well for this to be sustainable long term. And so I think that's a really important component for that.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, I think we all know there's two ways to increase profitability: grow revenue and cut costs. And I think we all know over the years being in business that, like you said, cutting costs is the short term, growing revenue is the big. Would you rather double the size of your company or cut your costs in half? Well, cutting your costs in half is a lot less money, right? Whereas if you're doing these things and growing your business, not only are you doubling, and I'm just using double simply for our math sake here, but you double size of the company, you're also becoming more efficient and increasing profitability. And so now that delta is huge compared to the savings you had over here and the growth. And that's what we're seeing so far in my clients and in the businesses today that are embracing AI natively and doing the process mapping and figuring out how AI adds to 1 + 1 = 3. We've all heard the stupid cliche. Figured out how AI plus humans equals 3. Those are the ones that are winning. So do that. Now, I mentioned in segment 1 about the AI Center of Excellence. Build that center of excellence, right? Figure out bridging the gap between executive strategy and technical implementation, right? I know when I sit down with our executives and my business partner here, I mean, I've been here almost 15 years now. We've had 1,000 things that we've wanted to do that we couldn't do because we didn't have time or money. And for us right now, AI is allowing us to do a lot more things on that list, which is going to lead to that growth that RJ just talked about, right? So
Yeah.
for us, we're using AI and that center of excellence and all these tools at our disposal and all these new capabilities that we can do. We're using that to take that strategic thoughts and desires of the executive staff and now knowing how to implement and tactically execute on those things now with the current resources that we had before with little or additional expense whatsoever, because now our staff are much more capable than they were before.
Right. And I mean, we understand this is not an easy task, right? I mean, you're as a leader, you're changing too, and you're growing and figuring these things out. So, what we'll say for whether it's, Ron at Clarity or myself and my team here at Friends of Commerce, also / Friends of AI, happy to jump in and help you sort of look at, okay, what does it mean to be, AI native? How do, looking at your business, your org chart, how do you understand, potential changes in, that, and looking at reskilling and upskilling? And we're happy to sort of just engage with you, have a complimentary consultation, share ideas, provide you feedback from what we're seeing. So, just the simple answer is reach out to us, either of us, both of us, happy to help and, provide some information for what we're seeing actually out there in the real world. And then as well as, you can always just follow us on our next session. Maybe, Ron, you can tee that up for us.
Sure. So the next session will be session 6. We'll be closing out our AI 101 series, and we're going to be talking about governance and ethics.
Yeah.
So look forward to seeing you on that one. Thanks for joining today. As always, please feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to get your feedback. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.